Hello, and welcome to the Argyle SMB Finance Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we will turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsors, Vertex and Bill. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active on social media, please use the hashtag Argyle Digital and follow us at Argyle Exec Forum. Also, be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I would like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we have received over the years from our members. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we want to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us today. Now, let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Jeanette Wade, Chief Financial Officer, Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. We're super excited to have Jeanette for her opening keynote presentation titled Resilient SMB Finance. Welcome, Jeanette. Over to you.
Thank you, Nick. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning. Good morning. We're here to talk about resiliency. And in our changing environment, which is the new normal, resiliency is key. How to thrive in disruption, drive successful enterprise sustainability, resiliency, growth, all while evaluating and reducing risk. It's the new normal for people in finance. So what's happening? I like to say everything's happening all at the same time. Technology is empowering us. At the same time, it's presenting risk for cybersecurity, the data and the information that our companies use and hold. Diversity, equity, and inclusion with the social unrest that's occurred over the past several years has become front and center for organizations, requiring organizational maturity, education, and training. Strategic business development. What is everybody doing post-COVID, or post the pandemic, I should say, because COVID's still going around? Requiring valuing of new investments, reevaluating what our businesses are doing, and then having the agility to implement. Post-pandemic business restoration. Some of our organizations are still recovering from the impacts of the pandemic and producing varying results. Employment attitudes, those have also shifted in our nation since the pandemic, causing staffing shortfalls in many arenas. And then we have the overall economic volatility with increasing inflation rates, increasing interest rates, that's impacting our cost of doing business. So I'm going to go into a few case studies around technology, around DEI, and just escalating costs in the healthcare arena to share some ideas around cost savings, evaluating investments, and implementing to reinvest in our organizations and drive sustainability. So, finance leaders of today, how do we support sustainability with business innovation? How do we talk about new investments? It's partly educating leadership. Our finance teams need to make evolution a priority in conjunction with operators and other executive leaders. You have to know where you stand and have a good pulse of the business. Use facts to get buy-in. Develop a roadmap. Talk about training and resource viability. And then monitor, communicate, and most importantly, celebrate results. It's been a challenging few years during the pandemic, and organizations are under pressure to evolve, sustain, and grow. And so let's take technology. Technology is empowerment. It gives us data, it gives us business analytics, it gives us opportunity to drive our business, but it also presents risk, significant risk to the organization, and ever-growing risk of cyber attacks. So let's talk about rationalizing new investments in this arena. There's a little graph on the right-hand side of this slide that shows how organizations are prioritizing cybersecurity. And there is no industry that has this as less than a 30% priority for their organization. So this sort of data can be used to gain consensus for this investment in your organization. So financial leadership right now is driving innovation while maintaining critical business processes, like closing the books, making sure financial reporting is squared away, and all the external compliance reporting that's required. That used to be most of the job, some modeling, some forecasting, and now all of that is much more critical, evaluating the risks in our current environment, costs, and then defining the value of new investments. So to be truly effective, it is impossible to ignore the overall need for enterprise architecture around technology assets, the role of data, real-time business intelligence, not the books that closed a month ago, but really real time, and then fraud risks to your organization related to cybersecurity. So finance has a responsibility to drive the importance of modern technology platforms and IT infrastructure and advise how leveraging data to transform the organization will not only enhance security, mitigate that fraud exposure, provide savings and efficiencies, but will also support innovation and growth. Many organizations, though, aren't even equipped to deal with the demands of today's tech environment. So there's immature technology practices, complex network architectures, technology that's unstandardized. It's creating fraud, vulnerability, poor work performance delays, and unnecessary cost. Technology teams are being expected to quantify enterprise-level requirements, understand financial data, and define budget needs. However, the cost of ownership for IT, things like hardware, software ops, maintenance, administration, those are often unbudgeted. And so the tech innovation needs of an organization often far exceed the budget that's been applied. So organizations need financial leadership who can define tech architecture gaps, provide financial transparency, understand the impacts, and allocate funding with a smart eye to savings and loss mitigation. So I'm going to share a few examples with you that I have used in past organizations, one of which is modernizing a desktop, standardizing the machine and the imaging, implementing bulk purchasing by standardizing, holding vendors accountable. That's going to impact and improve desktop support because with one image on standardized computers, it's much easier to service and take care of. And it increases the security because you don't have many platforms floating around. So you can secure your endpoints by buying and standardizing desktop hardware, software, and support, and utilizing productive, modern, secure, and responsive tools for end users. This will reduce the risk of fraud. Retire technical debt. So a lot of organizations increased their IT infrastructure over the past 25 years organically, adding servers and storage. And there's many servers and storage that are underutilized or not used at all due to the migration to the cloud. So each of those servers is about $74 a month to run them. And the more servers you have, the more fraud risk you have because your portfolio is much larger and the bandwidth and requirement on your IT departments to monitor that is significant. And the interesting thing is the smaller your portfolio is, the more you can control the potential external threat and exposures. Security advisor Roger Grimes actually indicated that 80% of security breaches are related to vulnerabilities that had patches available from the manufacturer when the vulnerability was already publicly known. So companies were hacked and they could have already mitigated it. But these massive amounts of underutilized equipment that have grown over time in organizations to meet the growing demand of technology makes it really hard to update and patch. So by reducing and doing fewer things, you can do them better. Then you can reinvest the savings from reducing that architecture into scanning for vulnerabilities, penetration testing, incident detection and response. So this is another way to take cost savings and reduce your exposure. Cloud migration. So this is an example from when I worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Unemployment online is where if you lose your job, you would go online and register for unemployment benefits. So we were faced with the decision of replacing the servers, which would have cost $3.3 million, or we could transition to the cloud. That's what we chose to do. So that investment was $1.9 million. So not only did it save several million dollars there, or $1.4 million, it decreased the database licensing by $400,000 a year, and it decreased infrastructure maintenance by an additional $500,000 a year in operating costs. So finance leaders focusing on IT are going to achieve a resulting employee base if they migrate to the cloud with current contemporary skills prepared to meet the current demands of the organization and enhance security. So talking about another hot topic in our ever-changing environment is around diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that will not only drive agility, but it will drive profitability for your organization. So both as a nation and globally, we've been confronted with life-changing and historical events that have impacted us on personal levels within our communities and organizations. We've had social unrest, Black Lives Matters, overturning Roe v. Wade, and the Me Too movement. Gallup actually measured unrest, and 4 in 10 adults currently consider organizing or joining a public demonstration. During the height of the civil rights movement, that statistic was only 1 in 10 adults. So how does an organization embrace one of these components, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion? So I wanted to share some building blocks around leadership alignment, getting board and executive leadership diversity and training. Make diversity and inclusion tangible within your organization. Establish a team, create a vision, mission, and commitment statement, survey the employee base, and create strategic plans, establish communication paths, use statistics to back up recommendations, and emphasize everyone's role in ensuring a company culture of DEI. There's many levels of maturity that an organization may have to go through, and your organizations may be at varying levels of this. The building blocks, I wanted to share some of those. So build, issue, and debrief a survey, understand hot buttons and the data for your organization, and share trends with your executive teams and your boards. Education and communication in your organization will be critical. At our organization, we built and implemented a multimedia library for communication. We organized trainings required for all managers on unpacking assumptions, exploring unconscious bias, and diversifying cultural competence. We created and recommended Book of the Year and created monthly discussion groups so that the work and effort of leadership for the organization became tangible to the employee base and created opportunities for conversation. In a LinkedIn study, companies with a DEI team were 22% more likely to be seen as an industry-leading company with high caliber talent, and 12% more likely to be seen as an inclusive workplace for people of diverse backgrounds. The building blocks of a strategic plan. We developed a strategic plan to implement, develop, and mature DEIA, leadership, engagement, policies and procedures, data collection and analysis. The common theme from the very beginning is data and analysis. Finance teams, more than ever, are being relied upon to provide data and analysis for organizations to move these things forward. Language, communication, and physical access, staff diversity, equity, inclusion, and access competence, workforce diversity and inclusion. So we developed goals and objectives, and we only went out 12 months because the environment is changing so quickly, similar to technology. So why do all this work? What are the business benefits? Tangible financial business benefits. But let's start with the ability to adapt. So diverse backgrounds and ideas make change easier within your organization. Recruiting is made easier. Candidates can see themselves fitting into a team. Complex and complementary skill sets enhance thoughts and ideas. Expanding reach, diverse backgrounds help enhance understanding of diverse communities and how to market to them. It enhances your company and your brand reputation. Diversity sets the standard for how you're perceived. It enhances decision-making. It creates diverse data points, reducing self-reinforcing ideas and groupthink. Employee retention. It positively impacts the bottom line. Employee engagement improves morale and motivation. It mirrors your client or your customer base more appropriately, and it builds connection and loyalty. So there's some statistics here. I won't read through all of them, but there's the one in the middle with 45% on it, 45% increase in revenue directly related to innovation as a result of having a diversified workforce. That is very significant. 35% more profitable than non-diverse companies. Those statistics are rather hard to argue with. So in my current engagement, we're facing a new healthcare climate. We're a healthcare organization focused on health equity and reproductive healthcare and sexuality education in Northern New England, which is Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. We have been recognized for 2 years in a row by Press Ganey. We were given the Guardian of Excellence Award for being in the top 5% of all medical practices in the category of patient experience out of more than 41,000 medical practices. However, healthcare costs are on the rise, and maintaining access to quality care is a critical focus for our organization. PricewaterhouseCoopers has indicated not only is the cost of treating patients on the rise, the healthcare industry is under pressure from high inflation, rising wages, and other costs, which are only compounded by clinical workforce shortages. Health payers are negotiating pricing with hospitals, which is what we're doing. We're renegotiating all of our contracts, while provider profit margins continue to erode. Our focus is quality and how we continue to provide the services that our organization provides and maintain quality with escalating costs. So I wanted to share, circling back to technology, one of the initiatives that we have focused on. We quantified the data around implementing a My Chart functionality for phones and desktops. Maximizing use of the tool has the potential to decrease check-in time at the front desk when you arrive at an appointment. It helps reduce the amount of time and complexity of clinical intakes. It decreases overall patient cycle times. It increases visit volume, and therefore it increases our revenue. It reduces the burden on the clinical staff, health center associates, and our advanced practice clinicians. So we went live on October 1st. And we had a target of improving our e-check-in rates by 10% each month with a goal of 80%. We're tracking those KPIs and statistics. Finance is being relied upon to provide that information. So establishing and evaluating and executing a plan for long-term sustainability is really important, and we are a significant part of that conversation. With investments in new clinical service lines, including infertility and menopause, to expand our support of reproductive health. And the finance team is quantifying the impact of potentially making those investments, the startup costs, the barrier to entry in that space because they're not currently lines of business we offer, and how we can continue to meet the quality standards that we meet. We are an integral part of the conversation as finance leaders. And so lastly, I just want to talk for a minute about agility during turbulent times. Talking through the things I've just talked about, it's clear that the bookkeeping function and the compliance and reporting function that many of us in these roles had maintained up until 5 years ago is no longer how we participate. And so what's really important for me is to support a high energy team and remember to celebrate the successes. There's a lot of pressure to deliver in this manner. And so celebrating with your teams is really important. Strengthen and maintain the critical processes that you have while staying forward focused. Evaluate opportunity with an eye towards organizational bandwidth. Often on these new investments, an assessment about resource capability is not part of the conversation. It's barrier to entry, it's financial results, it's return on investment, and all of our organizations, particularly with staffing shortfalls since the pandemic, are experiencing bandwidth issues, or a significant portion of them anyways. And so make sure when you're evaluating opportunities that you consider the bandwidth in your organization and any resource requirements to execute against new investments. Inspire the team with compelling problems to solve. Have supportive insurance plans to mitigate risk. Even if you do some of the initiatives to save money in the technology space and reinvest that into enhancing your cybersecurity, unfortunately, the bad guys are getting smarter and faster than we can keep up. And so having a robust insurance plan to mitigate risk is really important. Build a robust and flexible forecasting program so that you can provide your organization with the information they need as quickly as you can. Use scenario planning models to quantify risk. Hold operations accountable. The partnership with your operations teams and with the other members of your leadership team are really important. And operators need to have the business acumen to be able to participate in these conversations with a similar understanding of the financial impacts around operations. And then solicit innovation from your organization. Some of the best ideas that I've ever heard have come from folks all throughout the hierarchy of an organization. We regularly solicit innovation from our organization. Communicate, communicate, communicate. And then lastly, take care of yourself to lead. So, at the top of this slide, support your team and celebrate successes, the health and morale of your team to solve compelling problems is critical, and your own health to be able to lead is significant also. Thank you for your time. Nick, are there any questions?
Yeah, great. There sure are. Here's one from the audience. What recommendations can you make for businesses struggling to find the right technologies to invest in?
So I recommend, Gartner Resources is a technology evaluation group, and you can subscribe to get their white papers, and they compare different technologies, the cost of implementing those technologies, the rating on the technologies. They're a really terrific resource. It's called Gartner. And then I guess the other thing that we do is we have strategic sourcing teams cross-functionally across the organization. So when we think we have a need, we rely on Gartner to tell us who might have solutions in this space. And then we have folks cross-functionally across the organization participate in the conversations and get demos from those companies to understand what technology might be the right fit to solve the business problem we're trying to solve. The important thing for me is I try to make sure that any business process redesign work is done before engaging software as a solution. Because if you can implement a really terrific software solution on top of a horrible business process, and you're not going to get much better results.
Great. Here's another question. How can we successfully budget and prioritize new tools, including AI?
I think it's rationalizing the return on investment to understand where you should be investing. So I don't know, I would recommend a technology roadmap. The past two organizations I've been in, we've implemented a 5-year technology roadmap that included employee investments for effective employee management and employee engagement, operational investments, and then back office investments for effectiveness like finance software. And those budgets were strategically put out. We circulate them to the board. We update them on an annual basis. They become part of the budgeting process. So my recommendation is if you start that, you have a forward-looking roadmap for your technology investments. You can begin with data to get buy-in early. And then the roadmap becomes iterative and it becomes a conversation that's more common.
Great. And here's another question. Can you make any predictions as to what the biggest challenges for small businesses will be in 2024?
Well, I think staying nimble and agile and resilient in the face of uncertainty. You know, the pandemic is officially over, but I think business restoration continues. I know for my current organization, we continue to restore operations. So I think it's restoring operations, rationalizing costs so that you can meet the economic pressures of increasing costs to operate your business, and then just motivating your teams to stay resilient and agile and positive.
Great. And regarding FinOps, where finance engages IT to help automate legacy processes, what advice can you share to get started?
I would take your biggest productivity pain points. So what are you spending the most time on? I generally evaluate investments that way. How can you best alleviate work that your teams are doing with AI investments and other technology investments? So I look a lot at the team burdens. And then the other thing I look at is how does that advance how you work, right? How the way that you work, can it be simplified? Can it be more effective to engage with your customers? So I evaluate current burden, and then I evaluate future opportunity to try to prioritize.
Well, great. Do you have any final thoughts, Jeanette?
No, I'm happy to hear from any of you who would like to reach out. My contact information is at the bottom of the slide. I understand the slides will be shared. And I'm also on LinkedIn, which I believe you have access to. So look forward to hearing from any of you, and thank you for spending some time with me this morning.
Great. And thank you again, Jeanette, for an excellent keynote. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event.